Recording has now begun. Be
Got
on
it.
your best behavior.
It gives you the choice to leave if you don't want to be recorded. Isn't that cool? How many people did you end up inviting?
28.
Oh, nice.
That's a lot for me. I want this to be intentional, so the less the better.
Sure. Sure.
Oh, I have to admit all these people. I didn't know this was like a thing. Admit all.
There you go.
There's the group.
I know Rosa said she was gonna be here.
Okay, feel free to engage and ask questions, comment in the chat. I'm going to mute everyone at a certain point when everyone else is on, just because we want to get through what we want to share and bless you guys. So, okay, so
Yeah.
I see Stars on, my Aunt Ruby, Jessica, Damien. Yeah, it's so weird with Zoom. I didn't know you actually had to admit like everyone. I thought they had the option of coming on if they were invited.
I think that might be a setting. I don't know.
All right, well, everyone sit tight. We'll start as soon as possible. I don't want to waste anyone's time.
It's all good. Settling in.
I'm so excited.
And you get to actually talk to someone this time instead of a monologue, like your first debut video.
I know. So when I first went live, my first go live was,
She's so cute.
hi Jess, mute yourself.
Why can't I hear her?
Nobody knows.
Yeah, she's in here.
She's in the dance hall.
So when I first went live, there was some people who couldn't make it. But there'll be a lot of people that didn't make it will be on this. So I'm excited. Oh, so as Jason was saying, like when we did it on Facebook, you couldn't engage. It was just like everyone was listening to us. I was having like a one-sided conversation. It was so awkward.
Yeah. It was your monologue.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll give another like 2 or 3 minutes and then we're gonna jump in because I have a lot to talk about, a lot to ask and a lot to engage you with, Jason.
You got it.
And so basically the point of tonight is to encourage people before the holiday. And we were strategic in asking people like what they struggle with the most during the holiday. And so we centered everything around those things. So the topics are like grief, dealing with loss, dealing with not being in the holiday spirit.
The Grinch versus the Who's, right?
The Grinch versus the Who's, yeah. So my goal is like, if we can just touch 2 or 3 people tonight to just feel encouraged, we did our job.
Oh yeah.
So we have 5 topics and basically I'm gonna like share my perspective and then I'm gonna ask you your best advice and we're gonna just ping pong off each other like that. And then if they want to engage, they can like.
Yeah, does everyone have their chat open? Everyone can see?
I can see comments. Is this all you?
That's on me.
I don't know where Jess is. Is she still on? Yeah, she is.
No, she muted herself, but I could hear her trying to figure out if she could be heard.
Okay, so at a certain point, as long as my mom comes on, we're good to go. Everybody else can just hop on in, but I want my mom to be on, so she should be coming in on any second. Hi, sorry.
Hi.
Crystal, what's your mom's first name?
Rosa.
Rosa. Gotcha.
We have my brother in the house, his beautiful girlfriend, Star. They're all together. And who else? My other brother, Ricky, should be hopping on with his wife, Brittany. My neighbor. My pastors, my aunt. My friend, Mina and Damien. So it's like a mix of like a lot of supportive people, but the point is that we're going to film all this. We're going to record it live. So when I post it, it can reach other people.
That's right. Whoops. Uh-oh. What did I just do?
Okay. So if you see me pause for any reason, it's because I'm admitting people. It's quite a distraction. Okay. All right, so I'm ready to start. Are you ready to start?
Let's go. Let's get uplifting.
Let's get uplifting, right? So it's not for the masses. Whoever's jumped on at this point, they'll gain something. All right, so thank you everyone who came on in a timely fashion. I have the pleasure of introducing my guest speaker, Jason. He was my first mentor and fellow therapist that started with me in my first counseling job ever at Parkside Recovery in Philly.
Hit the ground running. Methadone clinic as your first job.
Jason has also encouraged me to start my own business. And because of that, I have started KD Coaching. So I owe a lot to him and my family for their support. But my first live basically was touching on my journey and why I decided to start what I've started. And now my one-off lives like this are to encourage people at no cost and just do what God's called me to do. And then from here, next year, I plan on launching a course that will hopefully touch lots of people, but I need to slow it down and start engaging people in a way where they feel like it's not about money. I just want to encourage people and do what I'm supposed to be doing. So tonight we decided we would talk about some much needed holiday topics to kind of prepare us for the next 2 crazy weeks. And I asked a lot of people, what are some of the things that come up or that you struggle with during the holiday season? And so this is very intentional. It's not like I just created my own topics. And also Jason and I kind of joint heads too, and deciding that, you know what, these are certain things that have been coming up with our clients as well. So we wanted to be very intentional on what we're touching on, and we're going to talk about that. So I'm going to bring certain things up. I'm going to give you my perspective and then ask Jason for his feedback and advice and encouragement as well. So we're going to be ping ponging. And it's cool because obviously we'll get different male, female perspective. He's a licensed therapist. I'm not licensed. So I feel like there's a wealth of knowledge to be gained from him. But yeah, do you want to talk about a little bit about yourself so I'm not ranting?
Sure.
Okay.
Let's see. I became a therapist. My first job was at an outpatient rehab in California, and that was 2008. That was my first job, first gig. Met Crystal many moons later at lovely Parkside. I think the city's largest methadone clinic. For those of you who don't know what that job's like, we each had a classroom of about 25 individuals on methadone, and had 3-hour groups with them. It was very intense work. Chris and I each took turns losing our minds and running out of the groups and asking for help. And it was a really amazing but difficult experience. After that, I went into an insurance-based agency to do mental health, became a director there, and eventually this year launched my own private practice. So I'm very excited. It's going well, and I'm of course very biased, so I encourage Crystal to do it as well. I think this is the time. I think that the needs there. There's less stigma. Telehealth, thanks in part to normalizing telehealth, has made a lot of this possible. So excited to be here, talk about holidays times, which is a very mixed bag for a lot of people. Some people are super excited about the holidays. Others are very depressed. So here to talk about the whole gambit.
Yes. Okay. So let's jump right into it. We only have less than an hour. I'm hoping I'm not leaving anybody else in the waiting room. I apologize if I am. I'm not Zoom savvy yet. But the first thing I'm going to hit on is the gift insanity that comes with the holiday season, and then I'm going to ask you for your best advice with it. So first and foremost, the thing that comes up with gift insanity, like I was all about it being the way that I grew up. I was very privileged, and Christmases were like everything. My family did very well with it. I looked forward to it as a kid. But I come to learn as an adult that if you're giving to receive, then your heart's in the wrong place. Like we're not supposed to be giving gifts to receive gifts. So we have to check ourselves if that's your motive, right? The second thing is guilt. So a lot of us give out of guilt. Like we're not a good mom, we're not a good dad. We haven't been able to provide. And so we operate out of a guilt, and that's very toxic, right? That's like another big realization I've had. Like I don't want to operate in that guilt kind of mode, because my heart, I want it to be pure, right? And I want to give because I want to give, not because I feel like I have to. So that's 2. 3, I learned more than anything that this season is about family and your support system, right? So I've had crazy Christmases in the past as an adult where I've like splurged and went all out, and it backfired. So I've come to learn that the Christmas season is not all about gifts, right? We run around and we're very manic about it, and the pressure's on, but at the end of the day, you guys have to realize that we can do the best that we can do with the resources that we have, but it's not all about the gift madness. It's really not. And I learned that the hard way when all my stuff got stolen one year. And I hated Christmas for like 5 years, and it ruined my spirit. For what reason? Like at the end of the day, my family was there, and the people that truly like showed up, that was what was important. So we have to remember what Christmas is about. And 2 more quick points, and I'll turn to you, Jason. I want you guys to avoid comparison. I feel like this gets us in a rut when we're like constantly comparing what other people are posting, and what we're getting and what we're supposed to be buying. And comparison is our deficit, I feel like. So social media is a contributor to that, but I feel like if you can limit that, like your intake, we can do a better job at not comparing ourselves to what other people have and what we're supposed to be doing. And I think that's really important, not to operate out of comparison. And lastly, I know at one point in my life, I operated out of perfectionism and people pleasing. And if you're that person that has to be perfect, you have to have the next best thing, give the best next gift, or just please people. Like you have a thing where you have to make other people happy more than you do yourself. You have to slow down and kind of like understand why that is. I operated in both of those modes, I guess you can say, for a long time in my life. But then I've come to realize like I've only come to disappoint myself, like if I didn't rise to that. So it was me. I was doing that to myself. I don't have to be perfect, and I don't have to people please. That's just not how God created us and how the universe has created us. It's just not okay, and it's very unhealthy. So after putting thought into it, those are the things that I've come to realize play a part into not giving into the gift insanity. So Jason, what would you say about that, and what's your best advice?
So, I think of this one client I work with that would go into debt every year at this time. They would max out credit cards and get family members, loved ones, just the latest designer clothing, the new iPhone. And it was like trying to cram an entire year's sense of adequacy into one day. That's how it felt to me hearing about it. Me personally, when I was a child, obviously I loved the gifts. It was all about the gifts. As I've grown up, as I've kind of had my needs met, they mean less and less. And I actually have a pact with my sister that we don't buy each other's gifts because we don't want the stress. And I love that. I think when I think about what compels people to buy more than they need for the holidays, and I think you touched on some of it, there's a sense of comparison. We have social media. Everyone's going to post their gifts. Yeah. And if you don't post your gift, is it even real? Like, did you even have a holidays if you can't post about it? I think there's just a lot of pressure for that. And I also think in this pandemic time, I see so much stress trying to get through the pandemic. I think a lot of people are turning to material goods as something to compensate for what they're going through and sort of why not? Like a sort of indulgence because we're all feeling kind of caged and like caged animals. So I feel like clinically there's the idea of how much money you're going to spend. Is this outside your means? I think there's why you're buying the gifts. And the thought of creating gifts. You know, we haven't talked about what it means to create something for someone. This year for my grandmother's birthday, she turned 93. I thought, what do you get a 93-year-old? And I couldn't think of a single material good because she doesn't care about that. So the thing I did was I wrote her a poem. To me, that meant more. And to her, that meant more. Because frankly, I couldn't imagine what I could possibly get her that she didn't already own. So I think about how do people approach this, what it feels like. And then on the other end of the spectrum, people who don't have any practices around gift giving and how lonely that must feel. Some clients just simply have never been part of the ritual. And so they're sort of feeling like outsiders because everyone's in kind of this manic frenzy state of sharing gifts and buying for each other. I'm also the cliche. I'm about to do my Christmas shopping on Friday. So that's when I'm going to start my Christmas shopping, the day before Christmas. So all sorts of pieces to that. Welcome, welcome. Yolei's waiting to get in.
Yeah, I admitted. No, you make some really good points. We have a lot of people, especially because of COVID and loss of jobs and all these things, that feel unnecessary pressure, and it's not about the gift. So if you can't be encouraged enough in this moment, just realize, like, if you have family and friends and a white elephant or a letter, that's enough at this point. Because honestly, all those gifts really don't mean much.
There's
It's
also
crazy 'cause
I was going to say, there's also this frustration with the gifts have to match in quality. There's nothing worse than having a really thoughtful, expensive gift and then opening like a cheap one, or vice versa. You get someone a cheapie and they give you this really heartfelt, exotic gift. And then there's like this sense of debt. So I think another thing to consider is, are people going to like, how's it going to feel if they receive an overpriced gift? Is that going to be like, oh my God, I got you a pen and you got me like the next PlayStation. This isn't, I feel bad now. And then it's just like a guilt-ridden experience. So there's all sorts of weird stressors I don't think we think about that have come out during this time. I think it's also okay to ask people, what do you want? I know everyone wants to surprise someone, but you know, you don't have to give exacts. You don't have to say like this particular item, but just a general sense. Just a thought. But yeah, go back.
No, I agree with being creative, because our financial means, but also the meaning behind it. And then the third, there's like this thing of us, your love language. If some people like really get gratification because they are a gift giver, right? But just, I don't know, taking the time to just realize like that's not what Christmas is about, is the point. The second topic we wanted to hit on it's huge. It's anniversaries, right? So like,
Well, hold on. Do you want to ask chat if they have any thoughts about gifts? Chat thoughts
Who?
on, I call the chat.
the chat,
audience.
sorry.
Chat, yeah.
Yeah, anybody else have thoughts on gift giving or how you overcame the pressure or
Yeah.
anything like that right now?
When you guys think of the gift part of the holidays, what do you feel? What are some of the emotions or thoughts you have?
I shall take silence as moving on. Going once.
I'll go, Chris.
Yeah, go ahead.
Gift giving, you know, I think for me personally, you know, you want to get, for me, I've always been a giver, so I love gift giving.
Rose, you went mute. We just muted Rosa.
Okay, can you hear me?
You're back. Welcome.
Okay, I'm back. So I think that, you know, I've always been a gift giver. I love giving gifts. But in the same breath, I think that the biggest gift and the best gift that I can have is to be surrounded by loved ones, which a lot of people don't have the privilege to be able to be surrounded by that.
Yeah.
And so I think most important for me, the gifts are nice and everything, but obviously, you know, material things are very temporary. I found over the years, like I've tried to shower my kids with all of that but nothing means more than spending time with your family, and really, and not just spending time with them, but being present, in the moment, the quality. And so giving all those gifts to my kids, I think what was more important was that, they were surrounded by family, you were present. There was a lot of love there. There was a lot of connection there. You get to, have meals with them and everything. And I think that that's something that it's more valuable than anything material or any monetary gift. It's more meaningful because those are your lifetime memories. You built memories during this time, and no one can take that away from you. And it's something that it will always be in your heart, that you would carry that, in your heart. And it's something that just, it's yours. It belongs to you. And so I think more than anything, that's for me and my family, it's all about being surrounded by loved ones.
Mhm.
Yeah, I
Thank you,
agree.
Rosie.
And Damien in the chat said you shouldn't allow it to consume you, and I agree. If you put other things, keep other things as a priority, like family, that could help for sure. Anybody else?
I think over time, hey, Star, yeah, I'll let you go.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. Over time, having little ones, then adult children, now grandchildren, I've learned over time how insignificant the gifts are. As Rosa was saying, it's really the love that we share, the time that we have together, the memories that we build. We forget gifts within days, or if they're not repurposed and
Regift.
regifted. Yeah, but like you said, I went through periods of time, when trying to shower the kids with gifts, and it's amazing to see all the stress and all the tension, everything, the money going toward gifts. They just rip through, open, go to the next, rip through, open, go to, and not even. I see you shaking your head, Ruby. It's like, so it's like, what was I doing that all for again?
Mm-hmm.
It was for me to feel good about what I did, instead of them feel good, because it just like, it didn't matter. It's like, what's next? What's next? What's next? So I kind of learned along the way that, what, I'm not doing this anymore. One idea that I just want to share, that I'll be quiet. 1 year, no, for actually a couple of years, what we started doing, we started baking Christmas cookies.
I love that.
And putting them in the little Christmas cans. And guess what my sister and brother and a lot of the family got? They got Christmas cookies. Do you know they were a hit? I'm telling you, they really loved it, because it was not just my money, because it was very minimal for it, which was good for me.
That's right. Cost effective.
It was the heart and, just the taste as well. But so I enjoyed that. I enjoyed them getting those tins, open up, and then chowing down on the cookies, and they enjoyed it as well. So it was just this great moment of giving and receiving, because I received by them enjoying it. So that I wanted to share that.
I love that. Star, did you have something to say?
What's that?
Star.
Go ahead,
Yeah.
Star, go ahead.
Sorry, yeah. there you go.
Okay, I wasn't gonna share this, but Brian was like, you should. So it's, I guess, a little more on the vulnerable side, but I recently, 2 days ago, had this experience where I went to go pick up some coquito at a friend's house, right? That her mom was selling. So I bought off of her, and I went in her house, and she had a Christmas tree, and it was hundreds of gifts. I've never personally seen that many gifts under a tree. And I got in the car, and I was telling Brian, I was oh, it's so crazy. And I started crying. And I was I guess the more I thought about it and the more I meditated on it, at first it was just a surface level of oh, my family never really celebrated Christmas when I was growing up. I come from an underprivileged family. So gifts was, you were taught to obviously be grateful for whatever you would receive, but around Christmas time, sometimes we never had a Christmas tree, and it was maybe one gift. But as I'm digging deeper, for me, I think gifts is difficult because it's the idea of like, I come from a broken home. So it's the idea of like, I guess it's like painful to know that like my family won't ever have like holidays together. So yeah, I guess for me, like gifts is like triggering in a weird way, but the
Yeah.
gift giving, I love. I love like genuinely just giving from pure intention, but I think like, I put a lot of pressure to like, not even receive gifts, but like, I feel a way when I don't receive them in a weird way, because of, I guess like that growing up of like not having that as a child. And then now I'm in a place where it's like, you know, every year on Christmas, I get something for myself that I've been wanting to like treat myself and have that. But I think that there is still a part of me that like struggles with the idea of it to this day. So
Yeah, I'll add to what she said. It's funny because as you heard my mom and Chris would say, like gifts for us on Christmas was like just a plethora experience. We got so many gifts, and you never really once really think. I mean, you hear it growing up, the other side of that, like the people that don't get to have that side of life. So when I was riding in a Star Wars car, she was like, you know, she was talking about it as she just said, but she was like, I don't even know what it's like to have Christmas like that. And I was like completely blown away. And I really, for the first time, had to like put myself in her shoes and understand what that felt like, because it's so opposite of what obviously, you know, we've experienced growing up. But for her, it almost, you know, now that you're older, you can understand so much more. So as a kid, you know, you don't really think too much of it. It's just your norm. But now that you're older, you have that wisdom, that ability to dig back in your childhood and your past and understand the circumstances that you were going through then, now. So when you think about it, you know, in depth that way, you start to feel those emotions and almost like sorry for yourself. Not out of pity, but more so like, dang, like I really was a kid and didn't have that growing up, and I realize that now, and that can be a sad thing depending on how you're looking at it. So it was definitely a crazy moment.
Yes, Star, I appreciate you bringing up the topic of essentially privilege. That gift giving really polarizes for a lot of people the differences in privilege, how much disparity there is. And it's a loaded topic then, right? I think one of the things I imagined when I was playing this with Crystal was honoring how certain things that can seem normal to some people can be very loaded, very powerful, very painful to others, and how easy it is to forget. Because, you know, if you don't think like that, you can just walk around being like, yay, everyone's happy today. You know, it's the holidays, and have miss a lot of information. So kind of, this is why I think this is so valuable, is to kind of stop and say, wow, that was just my experience. People have a wildly different experience of this time. So I appreciate you sharing that vulnerable thing, Star.
yeah, of course.
All right.
Thank you. So that kind of trickled into like, it's okay to not be okay on the holiday spirit. Like being that Grinch is okay as long as you're not taking out on other people.
That's
but
right.
It's very real that some of our experiences are not relatable to other people's experiences. So if you see like, oh, woo, walking around, like I've seen so many people out walking in like Springfield and media with like Santa hats, like, oh, telling on me, you know, and I'm just like, ah,
Full of the joy. Full of the
yeah,
joy.
and it's great. You can be happy for them, but like it's okay to not be okay is the point, because everyone has different levels of, you know, what they're going through right now. So the second thing leads me to anniversaries. A lot of people, if you're privileged enough to say you don't have an anniversary during the like this upcoming season, that's great. But in due time, like life, it's a circle, right? So eventually we're gonna have anniversaries of people.
Anniversary effect.
Yes, anniversary effect. People being in our lives versus not being in our lives. Things coming up that trigger emotions. For some people, it's grief and loss. It could be a plethora of things, but I wanted to speak on this briefly. I'm going to run through it brief, couple points, and then I'm going to give it to you, Jason. But again, I reiterated, like, it's okay to not be okay. The holiday spirit, it's not that it's like fake. I think it's just a tradition to be happy. So people, you know, exemplify that in different ways, and we have to be okay with it. But I would encourage anybody who's going through an anniversary season, whether it's negative or positive, just don't isolate. I try to spend a lot of time with my family, and now with the whole like virtual thing, we have means to do that, whether it's digitally and making time, being intentional with your time. So please stop trying to isolate yourself if you're going through something negative. My other thing with anniversaries, it's like it's reoccurring and we can't escape it, right? So like if somebody passed away, we can't avoid that. It's our reality. Although we want to avoid it, it's not going to go anywhere. So I'm sorry.
So Crystal, should I start sharing while you? Cool. So for those of you who don't know the term anniversary effect, the way I see it clinically is the idea that a certain day of the year will elicit feelings and memories from the last time on that date of the year something occurred. So if my parent were to pass away on October 11th, every year on October 11th, I might find myself feeling uniquely sad, distant, moody, irritable. And if I don't connect the dots, I might be thrown off by it. And, you know, during the holidays, if people had the unfortunate issue of losing loved ones, having death, having grief, having loss, those feelings are going to be in the background. And a way to illustrate the anniversary effect is to look at the kind of the way our memory works. Our memories aren't a straight line of just time. Our memory is formed in webs of association, right? So you associate a smell to a feeling, the feeling to an image. It creates webs. So it doesn't matter how many years go by. When a memory gets triggered, it gets triggered from that web. Time is irrelevant in that sense with our subconscious mind. So 10 years can go by and you can feel, did we lose our host? Crystal, am I on my own? Anyway,
Yeah,
you're good? Okay. So in other words, I think the goal with the anniversary effect, I got kind of sidetracked there, is to lean into it. If you've had a loss near that time, I would encourage you to ritualize it. For the most common, it's to pull out a picture, light a candle, be intentional about something, because otherwise the feelings are just going to be this weird, ominous background that confuses you. And the more we can bring light to them, the more we can acknowledge them, the less they'll affect our day. Me personally, I'm trying to think about major losses. I know my grandfather died 10 years ago on January 7th. So around this time, maybe a few weeks from now, he died in a car crash at the age of 85. Sometimes I'll start to get, I think I get angry as a driver now that I'm thinking about it. I think driving suddenly becomes stressful more than normal. But I also think I get a little sad or a little angry or a little irritable around that date. It also happens to be my date anniversary with my wife now. We met on the day, our first date, and later that night, my grandfather died. So that's confusing. So now a joyous day is also infused with a sad moment. So working through all that has been a journey. But normalize the anniversary effect, trying to bring it out to the forefront, I think is the advice to simplify it.
Yeah.
Other thoughts, Crystal, about anniversary?
I was gonna say, like you hit on, just like kind of not embracing it, inviting it, accepting it, coping differently with it. A lot of us get into trends like, oh, this time of year, again, I'm gonna isolate. This time I'm gonna be depressed. Like you already kind of invite that like negative emotion with it, but doing something different to change it it's a necessity, right? And then lastly, like I got this from you, Pastor Greg, like time, as much as they say is like an illusion, we could also change our mindset around time, right? So like I wrote down here, it can be on our side, like working against us, or we can perceive it as like it's working for us. So you know what? I already know, I'm anticipating this anniversary. I know what's coming. Am I going to invite depression, or am I going to invite like meeting with my mentor and walking through it, right? Or getting out, knowing that like I don't want that negativity in my life, right? So maybe I'll go to that graveyard, or maybe I will create a new tradition. So we have that in our control. And a lot of people lose sight of that because it becomes like habitual, you know, embracing that sadness, rightfully so, but we don't have to have that as an option. But I like everything you shared about that, and it's super triggering.
Yeah, leaning into it. Chat
so-
comments about anniversary effect. Questions, comments, thoughts.
Agree, disagree?
I love your advice, Jason. It's a powerful thing to do because you are no longer a victim to that emotion.
Mhm.
You actually get on top of it and you guide how you go through that. So I love that. That's
Right.
pretty good.
Yeah. You know, when clients tell me they have a bad feeling, I love saying there are no bad feelings. There's only stuck feelings. The only bad emotion is the stuck one. As long as feelings are moving, they're not bad. So the idea is we try to block out feelings every day. We have defenses. They exist for a reason. We have to block out to an extent, but sometimes we can overdo it. And the stuckness is what makes us depressed. One analogy for depression is it's the process of holding all your emotions down like a springboard, and it takes all your energy to do so, so you're tired. Depressed people are tired because they spend all their energy holding back their feelings. Once you let them move, your energy frees up, you're lighter, things are more effortless. So helping people not block themselves is a huge part of the work, especially as the season change. So we don't have seasonal affective in our agenda, do we? Because I just want to throw in a seasonal affective disorder.
We can make it a part of the agenda.
If you're either not getting 30 minutes of sunlight a day or taking vitamin D, I strongly recommend one or the other, if not both. I am prone to seasonal affective. Tend to be sort of a hermit in the winter times, and without that sunlight, I get really depressed until I started being rigorous with vitamin D. So just seasonal affective is very common. And during the pandemic, I think we've all been inside more than normal. So I think collectively we're even more deprived of vitamin D and sunlight. So just throwing that out.
It's a
Very
real
common.
thing.
Yeah.
I think I don't struggle with it as much because I was a winter baby. So I convinced my brain that like I have to celebrate and be happy in December. But my mom lives in Arizona and my brothers have lived in California and it works for them.
Right. That's right.
Yeah, the sun is helpful for sure.
No, I'm definitely a victim of that for sure. Me and my mom have been talking about this for like the last 2 weeks. It's just that for me, I think the things that are vital for me in my health is, like you said, getting that sunlight. I've developed a mechanism to staying healthy, not only physically, but mentally. And when that winter comes around, especially now I'm going through it more than ever. When that winter comes around, you find yourself isolating just because the simple fact it's 28 degrees outside. Me personally, I don't like jogging in 28-degree weather. I don't like taking walks in 28-degree weather. So, I'm forced to kind of just make the best out of what's at my disposal, but it doesn't necessarily seem to do me so much justice. So it is a challenge for me trying to not fall victim to that seasonal, depression.
Right.
My quick fix is getting on a flight and just going somewhere. But, I do that often, but, it helps. It helps. Anything rather than sitting in here or isolating or being a victim to that, just, will get me feeling better. But it is hard. It is very challenging.
Yeah. All right. I think we're ready to move on to, this is a loaded topic and we kind of hit on it with the anniversary effect, but like grief/loss. And when I say loss, I mean like not in the same situation you were in like 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago. So when I started asking people like what makes you struggle during the holidays or what's something that comes up for you, a lot of like loss was coming up, and not just physical loss, but sadly enough, I know a lot of people who have lost people, but it's like financial loss, right? Like you're not where you should be or want to be. Maybe you're a single parent, or maybe your life just doesn't look like what you'd want it to look like right now. So rightfully so, the holidays just are a bust for you. So I want to talk a little bit about that. You can go first and then I'll kind of hit on my concept.
Well, I think with the approaching New Year's, there's sort of an existential crisis that happens every year for a lot of people, which is, what have I just done with my last year? And what is going to make next year any better than this year? And, again, like all things, I think the goal is to lean into that, right? To look back at what the last year has meant. 1 year ago, I think pretty much today, I got fired from my job as director. I didn't do anything. Nothing brought it on, but they found someone better and they fired me. And I was really angry at first. But then I made the decision rather quickly to launch my own business. So I had loss around this time last year, and it was a bitter, kind of jaded ending at a company I had worked for several years. But the new beginning of the journey of starting private practice has now been my entire year. I started my practice January 2nd. So right after New Year's, I opened the doors. So this entire year has been devoted to this, to building this practice of mine. And that's, when I look back, that's what I did with this particular year, which I can feel really good about. I haven't always felt good about my years and how I spent them, but this particular year I feel really good about. But I think it is important to ask ourselves, well, what have we done with this year? What goals do we accomplish? But what goals have we postponed? What's got in the way of us moving forward? What are friendships that have outgrown their time? And what are friendships you have been not nurturing enough? Who haven't you reached out to? What are the risks you haven't taken? You know, is that cute girl at the office still single you've been meaning to ask out that you haven't done? Things like that. Like what are you going to do that's different? So I think it's important to ask ourselves that around this time and to be thoughtful about it. It's not something we should avoid. I think, again, lean into it.
Yes. I would say a lot of us have a tendency to carry burdens, and it's what I call false guilt, right? So like you take on something that vicariously wasn't your fault, right?
Mhm.
So like, it's like, well, I could have done that, but maybe something got in the way and contributed to your financial loss, right? Or you could have been a better this or a better that, but something happened along the way that made you take a few steps back or didn't allow you to meet the best version of yourself. So for that, I would say, like, we need to be cognizant of that like the more burdens we carry, the more false guilt exists.
Mhm.
And so if you can take a step back and realize like a lot of that stuff wasn't our fault, right? Different events led to different outcomes. And I learned to heal from that because I took on a lot of burden. You know, my family is not necessarily where I want it to be, but like I've acknowledged like a lot of the things that we are enduring right now didn't come a direct result from us individually. It was a multitude of different events, right? So just not carrying that burden and false guilt. And then lastly, like I've embraced that a lot of loss has built my character. So like if it weren't for loss, I wouldn't know what a win is, right? If it weren't for sadness, I wouldn't know what happiness is. So it's kind of like that like tipping scale of like the good and the bad. And of course we don't want to embrace loss, but I feel like it's helped me grow into the woman that I am today.
Well, it's funny. I'm working with a client who just lost her mother, and she talks to her every day. So one thing I do want to normalize is talking to deceased loved ones. I encourage my clients to have conversations with people who've passed. I encourage them to imagine what they would say in a moment, because I think the old school remedy for grief was to forget about it, move on. And that feels kind of psychotic when you think about it. It feels inhuman. So for those of you who are grieving, again, I invite you to bring in your deceased loved ones into your experience. Imagine them celebrating with you. Imagine what they would say and how they'd react. You know, I'll be thinking about my grandfather and some of his phrases and the way he navigated the holidays, that I want him to come closer to the experience, not push him away from it. So again, you're going to notice a lot of the themes of mine is to resist the urge to push things away and rather invite them in, because again, then it's on your terms, right? You're kind of having some capacity of control and change here, rather than, again, feeling like you just lost something else. So I have a couple deceased loved ones I'll be including in Christmas.
That's good. All right, so hopefully everyone's good with time right now. I have two more quick topics. I think we can wrap it up before 9 o'clock, which was my goal. So
Let's do it.
is everyone good to hang in for another 15 minutes? Is anyone gaining something? Okay, all right. So lastly, we can do them in any order, but I have religion.
Yeah, why not? That should only take 5 minutes. Let's go. Religion.
And then triggers for both of them simultaneously.
Yeah.
are holiday oriented. So for religion, I have two quick things, but do you want to speak on how it would relate to stressful times during the holidays?
Well, I grew up Christian, and for the longest time, I didn't realize there were other religions. I just thought this was what everyone does. It was normal for my mind. It was, I grew up in a white Christian family. It was all I knew. And over the years, I've been very, very diligent to stop saying Merry Christmas and instead say Happy Holidays. I'm very diligent on that. I celebrate Christmas. To me, it means a lot, but it's easy to forget what so many people experience, and it's easy to make people feel marginalized. And so I encourage all of us, again, stick with the safe Happy Holidays phrase. And remember, there's a lot of different religions that have different ways of navigating the calendar year. I have Islamic clients, I have Buddhist clients, Hindu, Jewish clients, obviously have Hanukkah during this time, but there's a lot of different ways to experience this. And it's easy to forget when you're so used to your own rituals, what else is out there.
Yeah, just respecting other people's beliefs.
Yeah.
That's challenged me a lot working with tons and tons of people. But I had two quick things. I put if you're somebody who lacks spirituality or a void, and you see all this joy and spiritual celebrations and things that you're lacking, it helped me, because I was once a Grinch and all that area, to be drawn to the people that I wanted to receive something from and ask questions, and then use them as my mentor to then navigate my spiritual journey. I didn't just select, what's the best religion out there for me? I was like, you know what? I'm drawn to their spirit and I want to know more about that. So what am I going to do to gain that perspective, or to gain that wisdom, and then follow that and gain mentorship that way? So I'm sure there's not too many people on this call, but being that we work with tons of clients at this point, I've always encouraged them, if you want something, and that's in any aspect of life, spirituality included, you're drawn to it for a reason, ask questions and seek mentorship.
Mm-hmm.
And then respect other people. They might not believe exactly what you believe, but rightfully so.
Pastor, you have some thoughts?
What did you say?
Pastor, do you have thoughts?
Yeah. You call me Gregory.
Okay.
You got it, Greg.
Yeah, it's one thing I've learned is that it gives us an opportunity to get to know people and where they are. And one thing I've also realized, don't be afraid to invite people into your celebration of the people of different faiths, because it's not just because they aren't Christian don't mean that they're get away from me. I don't want to have anything to do with your Christmas. Not very few people really feel that way, even Jews. So I find an opportunity to talk about what you celebrate, why you celebrate, even let them talk about what they celebrate, why they celebrate. So like Crystal was saying, you make that connection person to person instead of religion to religion, and stop the marginalization and pushing people away. You embrace people, and then you get a chance to share and grow together. So I love this time of year, and not to oppose what you're saying, Jason, but I actually like to say Merry Christmas, and I understand why you do that, but I say it because I want them to know what I celebrate. But I try to be conscious, like you said, to not push them away, well, I'm a Christian and I'm gonna shove Christmas down your throat. I'm like, no, this is what I celebrate. Do you have any questions for me? We can talk about it. That kind of, so to invite conversation. So yeah.
No, I'm big on that, just connection and relationship. A lot of people are stemmed away. This is a very fallen and broken world. So we're not in a position to not speak on what's working for us, what's helping us. People need some kind of something to attach themselves to. So what better way than something spiritual or a religious belief, right? No matter what it is for some people. I know what mine is, what yours is. But as long as you have a higher power, that's important. So I'm big on just finding that relationship. And he wanted to bring this up because we come across so many, especially me in the field of addiction and him with mental health, a lot of people who don't believe. They're non-believers. They've been very traumatized, rightfully so, and they don't trust anything above themselves, and they're very angry. And some of the stories you hear, you're like, wow, I get it, you know, and we haven't lived those lives and walked their shoes. So even the whole, like, the little glimpse of, like, you know what, I do yoga, or I do mindfulness, or I believe in Jesus Christ, or I believe in Buddhism, like, that gives them something to then pull themselves out of whatever hole they're in, because they don't believe in anything. And that's very dangerous.
Yeah, existentialism, right? What's the point of it all?
Drop mic.
It feels like we should end with that dramatic lean into the camera, but I think we still have a little bit more to talk about.
No, we have one more, and the last one is triggers.
Yeah.
Because we all are triggered in some fashion.
Oh yeah.
So
What triggers you, Crystal?
what doesn't trigger me is the
That's fair enough.
question.
Fair enough.
No, so for this one, I feel like holidays, like, it could be anything. The list of things we went over already. It could be people, family, different thing. The point of a trigger is something that creates a negative emotion or response.
Mhm.
So if if you find yourself being like super irritable, super negative, falling into an old habit, an old behavior, like, chances are you're being triggered by something. And I think our natural human instinct is to just cope with it unhealthily. But if we can identify what that trigger is, I'm big on, like, finding ways to not escape it, but cope with it. So for some of us, our spouses trigger us. I wouldn't know because I'm single, but it could be a family member. It could be the thought of, like, I have to, you know, step up and buy a gift and I don't have the money. Like, there's a lot of different things around this time that can really, like, make us feel bad about ourselves, or not healthy. So I will push that out to you. I have some coping skills I use, but what do you have to say about triggers? And anybody can
Yeah.
jump in if you want.
I think about the term regression. So for those of you who don't know, the clinical term regression means to enter into an older state of development. Whenever I go to my mom's house, it's a house I grew up in, I always find myself feeling more like a kid, not necessarily in a good way. More needy, more clingy, more irritable, more competitive, easy to get jealous on average. I tend to quibble more with my sister, or I often feel competitive with how she's doing, because of course my sister outshines me in almost every demographic. So easy to compete with her. But I think a lot of us regress around the holidays. There's something about it that can bring that out. And if we don't know what it is, again, it can just put this kind of overshadow feeling over the day. So whenever I go to my mom's house, I walk in saying, yeah, I'm gonna be triggered. I'm gonna feel regressed. And you know, my mom is a saint. I'll be the first to say she volunteers. She's the most pure kind of Christian I've ever met. She does all the right things, I believe. But she has a way of making me feel like a little kid again, and not in a good way, more like an inept, I need my mom kind of way. And that can trigger the crap out of me. And so, you know, I'm being around my sister, of course, the comparison, all the jealousy and all that. So I think it's normal to regress around family. Sometimes it's normal to feel younger. But one of the things I remind myself is, who am I today? Like, I know who I was, but who am I today? And I try to speak on that of my present day self, so I don't get lost in times, because, you know, I'm not here to share my story. My story has some really dark periods. It's easy for me to feel developmentally back at that age if I don't remind myself that I'm through it, and don't acknowledge that I'm engaging in regression by being at home with family. So regression is a really common thing around family.
That's interesting. Wait, so are they at our age supposed to build us up? And is that a problem if you feel that way?
So let me give an example. My mom will she has like her normal talking voice, and then she has her voice when she talks to children. And no matter how old I get, no matter the fact that I have a private practice, I'm married, she'll start normal. And then somewhere along the day, she starts talking to me like I was a kid again. And I feel this rage of like, Mom, I'm grown the F up. Why? Stop talking to me like I'm a darn child, like I'm a man. And then I'll turn around and like want her to hug me. So it's very confusing, like regression and all that. But again, it's normal. I want to normalize this. And, I think my mom has struggled with the fact that I've grown up in a sense. She's always a pure parent. She wants to be a mom. She loves being a grandmother. Thank God my sister got some kids for her to be entertained with in her retirement. But I don't have kids. So she wants to be the nurturer. And when they're not around, I can feel that motherly energy that I like kind of shield myself from coming on. So just another part of the holiday experience for me.
That's really good. So I would say, thankfully, my family and friends aren't my super big triggers. So I guess for you on the
You're
line, you have
lucky.
to figure out what they are. I maybe I just learn how to cope with them better. I don't freaking know. But I always had like 5 points, and I shared this with my clients, and I shared this with other people in my surroundings. Like, you have 5 options when it comes to triggers, and these are things that like get you your negative thoughts flowing, your anxiety, your worry, like it's just nastiness. And you're like, you know what, it's happening. So for me, it's accepting that something or someone's the trigger, right? Delaying my time, or just like not being quick to be that people pleaser if I know that they're not safe for me or healthy for me. Distracting myself in a healthy way. So if I know something's triggering and not good for me, then I'm going to find a replacement in a good way, right? A substitute, like there's plenty of times we have negative triggers and we're like, we dive into it, we cave into it. But for me, I'm like, I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to go salsa dance. I'm going to find something that I can replace that with. So I'm not like reverting back to that and giving into it. And then the last one is just escaping. Like if I know like there's been times where like I'm so inclined because like just the spontaneity in me. I'm like, I'm going to go there. I'm going to go for it. But like my gut and our soul speaks to us. That's truly what I believe. Your gut speaks to you. So if you have this bad feeling, like, you know what, I don't belong there, or no, I don't want to go there. Oh, I'm getting anxiety about this job or this party or whatever. I find a way to escape that bad boy. And I don't have to lie about it. But if I know I don't belong there, then I don't belong there, because the consequences are way worse. So I literally will say to myself, you know what, maybe I'll go, I'll stay for an hour and leave. Or maybe I won't go, but I have this thing that's much more of a priority. So there's ways to get around your triggers. Especially for people that know you're going to get that invite from a family or a friend or a drinker or a partier that you don't want to be around. There's healthier ways to navigate that without being shady. And you're right, it's called a boundary. And we need to be better at keeping them.
I always recommend drive separately when meeting with family.
Have your own
Drive
vehicle.
separate. Have those car keys in your pocket, because just knowing you could leave at any moment, you'll put up with that, annoying relative here or that one, comment there, that you could leave the moment you get to your limit. So I always drive separate.
Exactly.
Worse for the environment, better for my health.
Hey,
Yeah.
Jason, I have a question for you.
Yes, sir.
So I feel like, yes, it's one thing to be triggered, but it's a whole other subject when it comes to the thoughts that spiral after, right? Yeah. So for me personally, I can be very weak at going down a rabbit hole of thoughts when I'm triggered. So it's not so me stuck in this feeling where like, I feel like a common trigger is like somebody or something reminds you of a bad experience, or something reminds you of something bad, and your mood obviously changes accordingly. But for me, my triggers lead into zillions of thoughts within like milliseconds.
Yeah.
So what are some healthy coping mechanisms in regards to that rapid pace of thoughts? Because that is what seems to be out of control for me.
So two things come to mind. The first is when you look at the brain and you look at neural pathways, there's the neurons are these long kind of stringy objects that intertwine and they create these large, what they're called superhighways of neurons. Mm-hmm. When we are used to thinking certain patterns, every time we think those patterns, we add more neurons to that superhighway. When we try to change our thought, if you were to actually watch the neurons, they would unhook, pivot, and rehook to a new pathway. The idea is the larger the pathway, the easier it is for the thoughts to go down. So when you're trying to challenge your thoughts, what you're actually doing is you're trying to channel the electricity in your brain to not go down this large tube that's easy. And instead, you're trying to unpivot neurons to form a new pathway. that you have to reinforce over and over again until it becomes larger than the original and it's more natural. The best analogy is, imagine a river. You want to change its course. You start with a single stick stroke to cut out some dirt. Eventually the water trickles down, you keep digging it, and eventually you form a new river that's stronger than the original one. So that's cognitive behavioral therapy is designed to try to challenge the direction of thoughts to form new pathways so they become more natural.
So, and go, I'm sorry.
The second thing is, when you have rapid thoughts, the temptation is to try to outthink your rapid thoughts. Don't do that. What's happening instead is that your nervous system is going in updraft, right? Your body is now elevated with energy. Your cortisol is being released, your adrenaline's being released, and that creates the rapid thought sensation. It's actually more effective to focus on your breath when that happens and to try to challenge all the thoughts you're having. And the analogy is this: if you're in a car and you have a choice between steering the car that's about to get into an accident or hitting the brake, which do you do first?
Hit the brake.
Right. Hitting the brake in this analogy is using your breath to slow down your nervous system rather than steering through the barrage of thoughts, which is impossible at a high speed. So you hit the brakes first, you slow down, relax your nervous system. Adrenaline takes 2 minutes to break apart. When we release adrenaline, it exists in our body for 2 minutes until it naturally decomposes. And the reason we feel anxious for longer than that is because we keep thinking things that release further waves of adrenaline. We keep egging on the release of adrenaline. But when you slow your breath to about 4 seconds in, 5 seconds out, you're shutting off the release of further adrenaline. The half-life kicks in and your blood pressure drops, and suddenly your mind slows down and you don't have to navigate the barrage of thoughts.
That's crazy stuff. That's
I'm
really
gonna piggyback off of you. That deep breathing thing is a game changer, and a lot of people don't realize how important breaths are, but it slows down your impulsivity. Like if I take a second to take those breaths, now I'm in a mind state where I can rationally like think about things and slow down your thought process, or what they call like thought stopping. So an example would be like a lot of addicts that we would practice this with. Like I'm in pilot mode, right? I'm on the L to Kensington, or sorry, to treatment, and boom, I'm already like finding my way down to Kensington. How does that happen? It's like you're in autopilot mode.
Mm-hmm.
And there was something you experienced before you got off at that stop. What was it? Well, I was anxious, right? I already knew what was coming, a relapse to this, to that. Like, did you ever take time to like slow it down, take a deep breath, right? And then have that like realization of like, I'm not doing the right thing, because you're kind of caught up in adrenaline, like you were talking about.
Yeah.
And
One
we
thing
don't
I wanna-
practice like slowing down like that thought process, which is triggered by your breathing.
One thing I want to respond to that he said very quickly was that the first part of it, yes, I acknowledge the breathing. That is absolutely true. But the first part of it is what I never really realized. And that's the constant, digging and making that narrow pathway, if whatever you call it, making it wider so that way your new thoughts have room to go down. I think the biggest thing for me was getting anxious that my thoughts weren't changing easily enough. So it almost becomes a repetition that needs to be taking place. Like that other river is not going to happen in one thinking ceremony. It's going to happen through time. So a discipline needs to be taking place and a repetition needs to be taking place in order for me to get to a point of strength where it is easy. But that if you're thinking it's going to happen like that, which I do, or if you think it's supposed to happen like that, it's just going to create more anxiety because you're trying to figure out on top of your anxiousness why it's not working.
Right.
So
Yeah.
that was
And not just consistency, not just discipline, you have to be consecutively, because let's say you do 3 days in a row of good thinking. Well, one day is going to again reattach those neurons, pivot them back to good old first pathway real easily. So it's daily practice and being disciplined in consecutive days of doing this over and over again, where you start to really get the momentum. Because once you start to get that momentum, it gets easier and easier. It's the first thought. It's challenging the first thought that's the hardest, right? When you're used to thinking a really depressed way and it's so easy to go down that one rabbit hole, the way to challenge that first thought is the hardest part, because you're fighting this huge current of energy. You're trying to go against the grain. It feels so unnatural. It feels inauthentic. It feels all these things, but really what you're feeling is that energetic force to go down that old familiar pathway. But that first neuron pivoting is change. Every time we think, we literally change our brain structure. Our brain is constantly moving. These neurons are constantly pivoting all over the place. And so your brain is structurally different now than it was at the beginning of this video. Just because we talked about something maybe you hadn't talked about in a certain way you haven't talked, and the neurons fired in certain patterns that it hasn't done before. That's called brain plasticity. The idea of the brain adapting and changing is hope, right? That's the hope. When people say, I don't know if I can change, I kind of go over this idea of plasticity because structurally our brains can change and adapt more than we thought. And they used to think this only stopped at age 25, and that's not true. Throughout our entire life, our brain is actually plastic and can reform and reshape. So it's really exciting, the advances with neurology and how it can inspire us to practice these things and know that in good faith, we will feel better over time.
Jason, can you give an example of just quick, whether it be anxiety or depression, like what do we do different today versus tomorrow that we repeat or remind ourselves of that will build that plasticity?
Yeah, let's use anxiety. So with anxiety, you're anticipating threat and fear, right? You're on the lookout for what is the next danger. And while you're doing that, what you're not doing is looking at what is the next best outcome, right? You have to have an alternative. You can't just not be depressed. You have to replace it with something. Like, you can't just not be anxious. You have to replace it with something else. What's the opposite of anxiety? It's what can go well. What's the opposite of depression? What is going well? And one way to look at anxiety is it's a future disorder and depression is a past disorder. People who are depressed tend to be stuck in the past. People who are anxious tend to be stuck in the future. So there's also the question of, well, what's happening right now? One question I love asking my anxious clients is, yeah, you're worried about what's next. Well, what's happening now? And that tends, again, to center and ground them. And then as you practice that, again, you're starting to work away from future-oriented nightmare scenarios to present moment, what's going well, and then what do you plan on going well next? And that's one of the most common basics of challenging anxiety. You have to have the alternative ready to go.
I love that. Keep that in your phones, everyone. What's the alternative of what you're thinking now? And that's where the control.
Amen, Gregory.
But seriously, we lose control in those thoughts. We forget that we have an alternative because of the
Right.
norm, right? It's amazing. The mind is amazing. It's so good.
Cool stuff.
Yeah, Jason, you dropping some gems for sure.
He's a
Thank you.
goat. I use a goat.
Appreciate the good feedback.
Pastor, that was just running right through my mind when you said that, right? When you're connecting it to your faith and stuff, it's amazing. It's powerful. There's power in that. I'm listening to you, Jason, and my mind is just going because I'm like literally connecting this to scripture. So Pastor, when you said that, it's like, it's crazy because it's in the word, right? For those that are Christians on here. But one of the things that I wanted to say was like, I went home for a couple of weeks, and I realized, you guys were talking about, you were previously talking about how, the vitamin D it's healthy, it helps. And so I went home for a couple of weeks, and then while I was there, I started to feel oppressed, not realizing I'd never suffered from seasonal depression. I'm sorry, but being here, for a little while now, it's like, it really does make a difference. So when I went home, I was starting to feel that oppression from the gloominess and the cold there. But one thing that I thought of, and I've been thinking about a lot, is that we make choices, right? And the choices that we make determine the life we're going to live. Okay. So we have a choice, like you were talking about, Jason and Chris, to either stay in the past or move forward. Okay. And so the only way to move forward is, like Pastor Greg said, is to renew your mind, to renew your mind, to think the positive thoughts and to apply them. And you said earlier, it takes discipline, and it takes it takes discipline, but it also takes an action, and so I think that you know, the choice that we have to make is to like, you know, really say, I'm not going to continue to live a life of depression and oppression and darkness. What am I going to do about it now so that this doesn't consume me and control my life, you know, and put that into practice. So that's what I was reminded of when you guys were talking about all that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I also, Mom, want to piggyback off you because that all sounds great, but when we are not in a community or don't trust support, it's really hard or impossible to like feel like that. So for those of you that are like, yeah, it sucks to be like, hey, I need help, or hey, like, the last thing I want to do is talk about what's hurting me right now. But like, that's a game changer, because what you realize is people can relate to you and offer you resources, supports, connections, and you're not in it by yourself. Because I guarantee you, everyone on this line right now has gone through some stuff, and we didn't pull ourselves out of the hole by ourselves. So that's really important. Like, you can feel all that, but just know that the extra step and the scary step is reaching out to gain that help. And Mina, did you want to say something?
You got me, girl. Now, I took some notes because can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yes.
I can hear you.
Hi, Mina.
Okay. Hi, how are you?
Hi, thanks for coming on.
Thank you for inviting me. So I noticed this year has actually been a really good year for me, and I've done way better than the year before, because December is a trigger for me because of the holidays and also my birthday, and me dealing with the loss of my father, because there was a love-hate relationship between him and I, and we kind of got close towards the end, and I felt like I had a lot to say to him, and I never got the chance to do it because I kept telling myself, tomorrow I'll do it, tomorrow I'll do it. And well, tomorrow came and I never got the chance. Therefore, that kind of stood with me for a while. So for a while after that, I started struggling with the holidays. So December was always a trigger because, one, I kept telling myself tomorrow, 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 and I never got that chance. And also for my birthday, regardless of whatever situation him and I were in, whether it was not talking or talking, he would always call me every year on my birthday at the same exact time that I was born to wish me a happy birthday. So it's like, now that I don't have that, it's a trigger for me. So with that being said, I've learned, like, now, this year has been the one year that I told myself that I wanted to change things and do things for myself and try to break that that cycle of me constantly being in that, just becoming a Grinch, like Chris has said, because I've noticed, and a lot of people, like mostly my family, always say, like, what's up with you? Like, you're never like this. And it's always during like the holiday season that I get that way. So yeah, so that was that. Yeah, pretty much that. So just working on that. But this year has been a lot better for me. Oh, and then another thing real quick, I just looked at my note. Jason, I definitely want to try that, the taking in and the talking to the what was it that you said about
Yeah, I actually was thinking for you, I'm going to encourage you to do something a little different. I encourage you to write the letter of all
I
the
did.
things you wanted to say, and then find a photo of your dad,
Okay.
light a candle, and read the letter to the photo.
Okay.
Ooh.
So I have wrote a letter. I just it's still like the last piece that is like very hard, and I haven't gotten that chance to get that pen and write it down. So that's been a big struggle.
Yeah.
Days are better than others, but I'm definitely going to take that into consideration with the whole, like you said, the picture, the lighting, and then also talking to them and
Yeah.
bringing things, whether it's good or bad.
You'll know it's working if it's painful.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Mina, tell the crowd when your birthday is.
On Monday, December 27th.
All right. Well,
So we'll all
happy
be
birthday.
praying for you. I will be, and my little prayer warriors.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
But thank you for sharing that. That's huge. This might be your first big mountain to climb.
Yeah, this year has definitely been a lot different, I've noticed. And even when I do get in and that was another topic I wanted to piggyback on with Rosa about the spend time with family and all that. Like, sometimes I tend, because Crystal, you has said earlier, the love language. I'm the type of person where I love giving people things. it could be the shirt off my back, and that's just how I am. And sometimes I tend to get lost in like giving gifts for people that I kind of like start stressing out, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, they're not gonna like it. Da, 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 da. But then I got to take a step back, and my family constantly remind me that it's the thought that counts. And whether it's something little, whether it's 10 or, you know, like they're grateful for it. But it's just me. And I know this is just sometimes I get in my head sometimes because it's just like, I want it to be perfect because growing up, my mother was, you know, by herself and my father was constantly in and out. So for her to see her, you know, give her all for all of us, it's just like, I wanted to do the same, but it's just like, sometimes you got to take a step back and just remind you that family is everything. Love and support, like not a lot of people have that. And I see that on a constant, a day-to-day basis because of, you know, what I do for a career, you know, it's just like, so it's just, again, it's a work in progress.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
You mean
for
it.
That's good. That's good. All right. So Jason, you have been such an awesome blessing. Does anybody else have anything else they'd want to share? I know it's 9:15, so I'm gonna let everybody kind of get back to their bedtime routine and stuff. I hope this blessed somebody on here today or encouraged you. And I hope to do more of these soon.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Anybody else that I'm missing, if you want to like jump in real quick, or we can wrap up.
Say
Thank you.
So much.
Okay. All right. Remember to be
Thank you.
not a Grinch.
Thank you. Appreciate everything.
All right.
Thank
Good night,
you.
guys.
Nice meeting you all.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jason. Bye.
Bye.